There is a specific invisible threshold in personal finance that usually goes unnoticed until you look at a bank statement and realize you have been running in place for 5 years. We often visualize wealth building as a proactive sport, buying stocks, acquiring real estate, or negotiating a raise. But the mathematics of becoming a millionaire, specifically the reliable arithmetic of compounding interest, relies entirely on a variable most people assume is fixed. That variable is your structural overhead. When we look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditures Report for 2024, the numbers tell a story of survival, not luxury. The average household is $26,266 a year on housing. That is 33.4% of total spending. It is the first rent, the one you signed a lease or a mortgage deed for. We accept this. We to budget for it. But directly underneath that obvious number lies a phantom cost, a financial phenomenon that acts exactly like a second rent. It is a monthly minimum payment required just to maintain the logistics of a modern, time-poor life. This second rent is not composed of one large check written to a landlord. It is an aggregation of hundreds of microtransactions that, when combined, often exceed the cost of the mortgage itself. This is the cost of convenience, but calling it convenience is misleading because it implies a luxury. For the modern worker, these costs feel less like indulgences and more like mandatory fees for participating in the workforce. And this is where the path to saving $500 a month, the golden number that mathematically guarantees millionaire status over a working career, gets blocked. To understand why this capital is so hard to find, we have to look at the relationship between time and money. The Levy Economics Institute released data in 2025 regarding time poverty. They found that approximately 39% of single adults are effectively time poor. This means they simply do not have enough hours in the day to perform necessary household production. For employed women, the rate of time poverty is 9 percentage points higher than for men. This deficit of time creates a vacuum, and in a market economy, vacuums are filled by paid services. If you cannot cook because you are commuting, you pay a premium for prepared food. If you cannot clean because you are working overtime, you pay for a service. If you cannot watch your children because both parents are in the workforce, you pay to institution. We need to analyze the specific components of this second rent. Because unlike the first rent, this one is variable, and it is largely psychological. It starts with how we move. The average household spends $13,318 on transportation. That is 17% of total spending. This is the price of speed and reliability. We pay this premium because we are chasing the clock. Consider the layout of the modern family. 49.6% are dual-income households. This structure, theoretically, should double the wealth, but often it merely doubles the overhead. When both adults leave the house for work, the domestic infrastructure must be outsourced. This outsourcing is most visible and most painful in the realm of childcare. This is the anchor of the second rent. Data from Child Care Aware of America in 2024 shows the average price of childcare has hit $13,128 a year. That represents a 22% increase since 2020. Now pause and look at those numbers. Transportation is over $13,000. Childcare is over $13,000. Before you have bought a single grocery or paid your actual mortgage, you are paying $26,000 a year just for the privilege of going to work. This is the structural trap. We assume that earning more money solves the problem, but if earning that money requires a linear increase in the cost of outsourcing your life, the net margin remains zero. The situation is compounded by a specific type of inflation that targets these service-based sectors. The Bank of America Institute reported in October 2025 that childcare payments increased by 5.2% year over year. That is 1.5 times faster than overall inflation. This suggests that the second rent is rising faster than the first rent. While a fixed-rate mortgage stays the same for 30 years, the cost of the services you need to maintain your career is compounding against you. This leads us to a difficult realization about the Latte Factor, or the avocado toast arguments that permeate pop finance. Those arguments are technically correct but structurally irrelevant. Yes, small purchases add up, but people do not buy $5 coffees because they are bad at math. They buy them because they are tired. When you are statistically time-poor, impulse control degrades. The Atlanta Fed's Diary of Consumer Payment Choice shows a fascinating behavioral shift. The average cash carried by a person dropped from $81 in 2023 to $67 in 2024. We are moving away from physical friction in spending. When you pay with a tap or a saved credit card on a delivery app, the pain of payment disappears. This facilitates the second rent. It allows the recurring costs of convenience to slide through our accounts unnoticed. You don't feel the money leaving, you just feel the problem. Hunger, fatigues, mess, being solved. Let's apply this to a concrete mathematical model to see how it destroys the potential for wealth. Imagine a household, the Millers. They take home, after taxes, $8,000 a month. That sounds like a robust income. Their mortgage is $2,500. Their cars and insurance, the transportation anchor, cost $1,100. They have one child in daycare, costing $1,100. Already their fixed costs are $4,700. They have $3,300 left. This is where the second rent creeps in, because they are both working and commuting. And note that the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported in 2024 that only 10% of private sector workers had access to commuting subsidies. So they are paying this out of pocket. They are exhausted. They spend $800 a month on groceries, but because they toss out fresh produce, they didn't have time to cook. They spend another $600 on takeout and convenience meals. They pay $200 for a bi-weekly cleaner because their weekends are occupied with parenting. They spend $300 on subscription services, fast shipping memberships, and entertainment to decompress. They spend $400 on miscellaneous friction reduction, Uber rides when running late, convenience store markups, and impulsive online purchases. Let's tally the second rent here, the takeout premium, the cleaner, the subscriptions, the friction costs. That is roughly $1,500 of soft costs. Add that to their fixed costs and groceries. They are spending $7,000 a month. They save $1,000. That sounds great. But usually that $1,000 gets eaten by irregular expenses. Car repairs, holiday gifts, medical copays. They end the year with zero net accumulation. Now, consider the alternative proposal, the proposal that turns them into millionaires. The premise is that if you can extract $500 a month from this churn and invest it, if you invest $500 a month into a standard S&P 500 index fund, assuming a historical average return of 10% or 7% inflation adjusted, the results are staggering over a long horizon. In 10 years, that $500 a month becomes roughly $86,000. In 20 years, it becomes $260,000. In 30 years, it crosses $600,000. In 40 years, that $500 a month becomes nearly $1.6 million. The math is not the hard part. The hard part is reclaiming the $500 from the second rent. This is where reasonable people disagree on the solution. A strict utilitarian would say, cancel the cleaner, cook every meal, sell the second car, but that ignores the reality of burnout. If you cut all conveniences, you risk psychological collapse or physical illness. However, there is a nuance here that often gets missed. We tend to view convenience as binary. Either we do it all ourselves or we outsource it all. We rarely audit the efficiency of the outsourcing. The trap is that we often pay for conveniences that do not actually save us time. They only save us effort. So ordering food delivery takes 5 minutes of effort, but it costs 3 times the price of cooking. Does it save time? Sometimes not if you wait 45 minutes for the driver. A meal kit service might cost more than groceries, but it eliminates mental load. It might be a highly efficient use of capital. Unlike the random takeout order, we must also address the counter-argument regarding career investment. A common rebuttal is, I pay for these services so I can focus on my job and earn more. This is a valid strategy, but only if the numbers balance. If you spend $2,000 on convenience for a $1,000 raise, you lose. You are subsidizing your employer with your own net worth. The convenience arbitrage only works if income increase exceeds the service cost. Furthermore, this dynamic depends heavily on geography. In a high cost of living city, the price of services is significantly higher. The second rent in New York is exponentially higher than in rural areas. There is another layer, the psychology of the monthly payment. We have been trained to view costs as a monthly flow, not capital. A car is $500 a month. A subscription is $15 a month. We rarely calculate the total cost of ownership. When viewed as small payments, we fail to see a massive liability. If convenience spending was one $2,000 bill, you would declare an emergency. You would shop around. You would negotiate. But because it is fragmented into 60 different transactions, a coffee here, a delivery fee there, a subscription there, it evades our threat detection systems. Let's return to the math of the $500. Why is this specific number so powerful? It represents the gap between subsistence and accumulation. The first $500 you save is the hardest money you will ever earn. It requires fighting the entropy of modern life. It requires telling yourself no when the economy makes it easy to say yes. But once that $500 is systematized, it begins to work for you. For the dual-income family, reclaiming this money requires a structural audit. It might mean moving closer to work to eliminate transportation costs. It might mean staggering work schedules to reduce the childcare bill. These are uncomfortable structural changes. They are not as easy as skipping lattice, but they are the only changes large enough to move the needle. We also have to be honest about the role of expectations. There is a concept in sociology called reference group theory. We compare our lifestyle to our immediate peers. If every couple leases 2 SUVs and orders dinner, that behavior normalizes. Deviating from it feels like poverty, even if it is the path to wealth. The second rent is essentially a tax on conformity. You pay it to live the same life as everyone else. But what if you didn't? What if you accepted friction for freedom? The Bureau of Labor Statistics data on housing and transport are averages. Averages are driven by the majority behavior. The majority behavior currently results in a savings rate that is dangerously low. To get the result that the minority gets, you have to reject majority spending. This doesn't mean you must live in misery. It means you must be intentional. The goal is to convert fixed overhead into discretionary spending. When you are locked into a high-convenience lifestyle, you have no flexibility. If one partner loses a job, the system breaks. If you strip away the second rent and perform labor yourself, you regain control. You are no longer dependent on a web of paid services to function. The math of the millionaire is boring. It is simple multiplication. $500 times 12 months times 30 years at 7%. The variables are known. The only unknown is whether you can defend that $500 from the thousands of hands trying to take it from you in small fees. As you review your own finances, look past the big numbers. Look past the mortgage and the car payment. Look at the friction.